Alexander Sterling, a ruthless 38-year-old mogul, froze in the hallway of Sterling Estate. When he heard that voice, the new housekeeper was humming as she cleaned the music room. A melody. That shouldn't have existed anywhere in the world. He'd composed that tune in 1750, and he'd never written it down. How did she know it? 3 days earlier, Emily Carter had arrived at Sterling Estate during a torrential downpour. 26 years old, a single mother, wearing an ill-fitting borrowed uniform. In her arms, Lily, her 5-year-old daughter, was trembling with fever. The employment agency had warned her this was her last chance. No references, no experience in estates like this. But she needed that job. Any job. Alexander watched from his office window. He saw the woman, soaking wet at the service entrance, dark hair plastered to her face, the child coughing. Something tightened in his chest. A strange, unsettling sensation. He never hired people with children. It complicated things. But when the head housekeeper came to ask permission to dismiss the applicant, he heard himself say, "Hire her." The head housekeeper blinked, surprised. "Sir, are you sure? The child is sick. She'll need days off. She'll..." "Hire her," he repeated, his voice firmer, "and arrange for a doctor for the child." That first night, Emily stayed in the maid's room on the 3rd floor, tiny, but clean, warmed by the radiator. Lily fell asleep in the narrow bed after the house's private doctor came, examined her and prescribed antibiotics. Emily sat on the floor leaning against the wall and silently wept. They'd been living on the streets for 2 months. If you've ever felt like your entire life was waiting for a specific moment, for a specific person, without knowing why, you'll understand what happened next. The next day, Emily began working. The head housekeeper gave her strict instructions. Do not speak to Mr. Sterling unless he speaks to you first. Do not enter his office, and never, never touch the piano. Especially do not touch the piano. Emily was cleaning the music room when she saw the instrument, a black Steinway grand, gleaming, imposing. She'd never played the piano in her life, barely knew how to read music, but something about that instrument drew her in, like a magnet, like a memory that wasn't hers. She dusted the closed keys. Slowly, and without thinking, she began to hum. Alexander was upstairs, reviewing contracts. Then he heard it. 3 notes. Just 3 notes. But he knew those notes. The pen slipped from his hand. His heart leaped into his throat. Impossible. He took the stairs 2 at a time, stopped at the doorway of the music room. Emily was facing away from him, dusting the piano, humming softly. The melody flowed naturally, unconsciously, as if it had always been there. "Where did you learn that?" His voice came out louder than he intended. Emily jumped, startled. She knocked over the bottle of furniture polish, turned pale. "I'm sorry, sir. I wasn't. I didn't." She swallowed hard. "What have I done?" "Where did you learn that music?" He took a step forward, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity she'd never seen before. I don't know." She looked around, confused. "I didn't learn it. I just was humming. It was automatic. I didn't even realize I was making a sound." "Sing it again." It wasn't a request. It was an order. Emily blinked. "Sir?" "The music you were singing. Sing it again. Now." Her heart raced. Was she going to be fired for humming? God, she needed this job. Lily needed it. "I don't know if I can repeat it, sir. It was accidental. I swear it won't happen again." Alexander clenched his fists. The emotion rising in his throat was unbearable. 275 years. 275 years since he composed that melody. In his cell, before his execution. He'd sung it to her one last time through the bars, seen her cry, seen her promise, in every life. "My voice will find you." He shook his head. He was losing his mind. This wasn't possible. It wasn't rational. He didn't believe in reincarnation, in past lives, in soulmates. He believed in numbers, contracts, tangible reality. "You can go," he said, his voice hoarse, and he turned away before she could see the expression on his face. Emily left the room trembling, confused, frightened, but something inside her whispered, "You know him. You've always known him." That night, Alexander locked himself in his office. He opened his laptop, searched for the melody, used music recognition apps, searched databases of classical compositions. Nothing. That melody didn't exist in any recording, because he'd never written it down. It was the last thing he composed, in his cell, in 1750, for her, for his Duchess Eleanor, before they hanged him for daring to love her. He slammed the laptop shut. This is insane. But on the fourth floor, Emily was lulling Lily to sleep, humming softly, the same melody, unaware that each note was a bridge between centuries. Lily opened her eyes, drowsy. "Mommy? Why are you sad when you sing that?" Emily stopped. "I'm not sad, sweetheart." "Yes, you are." The little girl touched her mother's face. "You cry inside. And Mr. Sterling, too. You know each other from before." Emily froze. "What are you talking about?" Lily yawned. "From long, long before, when you wore that pretty blue dress and he played music." She turned on her side, closing her eyes. "You were happy, until you weren't." Emily's blood ran cold. Lily always said strange things ever since she was little, saw things, felt things. The doctors said it was a fertile imagination, but sometimes, if this connection is stirring something inside you, if it's making you ask questions you shouldn't, you're not alone. Give a thumbs up if you want us to keep unlocking the impossible together. The next morning, Alexander avoided the music room, but in the middle of the afternoon, he heard it again, Emily humming, this time in the library, dusting the tall bookshelves. The melody flowed longer now, more complete, as if she was remembering it little by little. He walked in silently, stood watching. She reached for the books on the highest shelf, on her tiptoes, singing softly, distracted. And then it happened. Emily lost her balance, fell backwards. Alexander crossed the library in 3 strides, caught her, his arms around her waist, her body pressed against his, and the world exploded. Golden light pouring from immense crystal chandeliers, the scent of beeswax candles mixed with the perfume of white roses, heavy velvet fabrics on the walls, embroidered with gold threads that reflected the dancing light of the flames. The sound of 100 conversations, whispered in aristocratic French, laughter held back behind hand-painted fans. She was there, Duchess Eleanor de Valois, wearing a sky-blue dress that cost the equivalent of a servant's salary for a year, gold and silver thread embroidered onto her bodice. Each stitch hand-sewn by seamstresses who labored for months, her hair piled high in elaborate curls, intertwined with real pearls. White silk gloves stretching to her elbows, a diamond necklace blazing against her throat, capturing and refracting light like miniature suns. But she wasn't looking at the nobles around her. She wasn't paying attention to the Marquis de Bordeaux, her betrothed, who was droning on about lands and inheritances beside her. Her eyes, the color of dark honey, were fixed on the corner of the music room, where he was playing, Alexander Sterling, the estate's music director, 28 years old, a simple, faded brown jacket, washed and mended so many times it was beginning to fray at the seams, second-hand black trousers, shoes that pinched, but were the only ones he had, dark hair tied back with a plain ribbon, hands calloused from years of playing to survive. But when he played, the entire room fell silent, because that kind of talent, that kind of soul, couldn't be bought. It came from something deeper, and he was looking at her, through the aristocrats and the crystal chandelier, and the centuries of class divide. He looked at her as if she was the only person in the world, as if all her gold meant nothing, as if he saw her, really saw her. She smiled, small, almost imperceptible behind her fan, but he saw it, and responded with a minimal nod, and played a new melody, created in that very moment, just for her. A musical promise. This is forever. I will find you in every life, My music will always know your name. The moment lasted 3 seconds in the reality of the music room, but it was etched into their souls for eternity. Alexander dropped Emily's hand as if he'd been burned. He stumbled backward, his breathing uneven. What was that? Emily was on the floor where he'd left her, eyes wide, hands shaking. Did you see it? Her voice was a whisper. He didn't answer. He fled from the library. He locked himself in his room and sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. That didn't happen. It didn't happen. But it did, and they both knew it. In the following days, Alexander increased the distance between them. He wouldn't look at Emily, wouldn't speak to her. He gave orders through the head housekeeper, Lily. Emily was a ghost in his estate, a ghost who hummed an impossible melody and made the past bleed into the present. Emily felt the rejection like a physical wound, but worse was the confusion, the dreams that had started. Every night, the same dream. A music room, a party. She was in blue. He was playing, and then running, fleeing. The chase, the trial, the chains, the rope. She'd wake up sweating, heart racing. And Lily was always awake too, watching her. Did you see him, Mummy? Did you see when they took him away? Emily started avoiding sleep. 2 weeks after the incident in the library, Alexander relented. So he needed to understand. He needed answers. He called a psychiatrist colleague, a specialist in memories. The man agreed to come to Stirling Estate discreetly. Alexander hadn't planned to involve Emily, but the psychiatrist was clear. If there's a connection, both need to participate, otherwise it won't work. It was Lily who convinced Emily. Mister, Stirling is requesting your presence in the study. Something about the incident in the library. Emily went, nervous, thinking she was going to be fired. She found Alexander and a grey-haired man with round glasses. This is Dr. Mendez, Alexander introduced reluctantly. He's a psychiatrist, a specialist in unusual memories. Emily looked from one to the other. I don't understand. Please sit down. The doctor indicated an armchair. I'm going to ask some questions. There's no right or wrong answer. Just be honest. What followed was the strangest hour of Emily's life. Questions about the melody, about the dreams, about the feeling of touching Alexander, about Lily. The doctor noted everything, his expression neutral. When it was Alexander's turn to answer, Emily heard things that made her question reality. He described the same melody, the same dreams, the same music room, the same party. Details she had never told anyone. Dr. Mendez took off his glasses and cleaned them slowly. What I'm about to say will sound impossible, but I've seen similar cases. Rare, but they exist. You two are experiencing what we call cross-memory from past lives. Shared, extremely rare, usually validated by external evidence. Alexander stood up. This is absurd. I don't believe in reincarnation. You don't have to believe it, but you do need to investigate. The doctor looked at Emily. Does she have any unusual physical marks? A birthmark, a scar with no origin? Emily instinctively brought her hand to her neck. Alexander noticed the gesture. Show me. She hesitated. It's just a birthmark. Everyone has them. Show me, he repeated. Emily lowered the collar of her uniform. On the left side of her neck, just above the collarbone, was a dark mark, a horizontal line, like an old burn, like a rope. Alexander went white. He staggered and sat down heavily. No. The doctor approached. May I examine it? Emily nodded. He observed the mark with a magnifying glass. Fascinating. The pigmentation is consistent with a birthmark, but the shape accurately mimics a ligature mark, a rope. People are hanged with ropes, Alexander whispered, but he was looking at Emily because he remembered. He remembered being suspended, remembered the rope tightening, remembered seeing her in the middle of the crowd, screaming, remembered dying looking at her. And Emily remembered too, remembered screaming, remembered being dragged away, locked in the tower, remembered climbing to the window, singing his melody one last time, and jumping. She stood up, dizzy. I need to get out of here. I need air. Alexander grabbed her arm. Emily. His eyes locked onto hers. Do you remember? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I remember you dying. I remember not being able to live after that. Dr. Mendez watched, silent. Finally, he spoke. There's a test we can do. Regressive hypnosis. To access specific details, dates, names, locations. Things that can be verified historically. Alexander released Emily. Do it. With her first. No. With both of you. At the same time, each summer separate rooms to avoid memory contamination. It was scheduled for the next day. Emily barely slept. Lily was restless all night. Mommy, you're going to see sad things, but you need to see them. Otherwise, he won't believe. Believe what, darling? That you're real, that you always have been. The next afternoon, Dr. Mendez arrived with a colleague. Dr. Carvalho, also a psychiatrist. Alexander would be led by her, Emily by him. Separate rooms, recorded, simultaneously. Alexander lay down on the bed in the guest room. He took a deep breath. This isn't going to change anything. I already know it's real. Then why are you resisting? Doctor. Carvalho prepared the recorder. Because if it's real, he closed his eyes, everything I've built, everything I believe, crumbles, or it expands. She placed her hand on his wrist, monitoring him. Breathe. Let go. Alexander obeyed. A deep breath. Deeper. The room faded away, and he fell. He fell through centuries, through lives, through everything that was solid and rational, until he landed in 1750. The cell smelled of mildew, dampness on the stone walls, rusty chains, rotten straw on the floor, a cold that penetrated to the bone. He was there, Alexander Sterling, 28 years old, 3 days without food, fists bleeding from where the chains cut. But it wasn't the hunger or the physical pain that was killing him. It was knowing that she was suffering too. He could hear her, North Tower, locked away, crying. The sound traveled across the courtyard on quiet nights, tearing his heart more than any physical torture could. On the night before the execution, a guard took pity, let him stand near the cell window, from where he could see the tower in the distance, from where she might be able to hear him. And he sang. He composed the melody right there, with a voice broken by thirst and despair, notes that came from the soul, not from technique. Each musical phrase was a promise. Each chord was an oath. In the next life I will find you. My music will know your soul. Through the centuries, through death. My love is eternal. In Emily's room, simultaneously, she was in the tower, Duchess Eleanor de Valois. 25 years old, swam, dress torn, hair disheveled, 3 days without water, hands bleeding from pounding on the thick wooden door, screaming until she lost her voice, begging to see him, yours, one last time, just one last time. But nobles did not beg for servants. That's what her uncle, the Duke, repeated through the door. She had demeaned herself, dishonored the family, loved a commoner. An unforgivable crime. On the night before the execution, she heard it. From across the courtyard, a weak but unmistakable voice, he was singing, to her, a new melody, one she had never heard. But she knew it, every note. as if it had always lived in her soul. She crawled to the tower window, pressed her face against the cold iron bars, and sang back, with a voice hoarse from crying and dehydration. But she sang the same melody, as if she had always known it, as if she had been born knowing it. And for 3 minutes and 42 seconds, separated by a stone courtyard and centuries of class systems, they sang together for the last time in that life. When the melody ended, she screamed across the night wind, "I love you. I have always loved you. I will always love you. In every life, I promise." "I swear on my soul," and he shouted back, his voice breaking, "I will find you. No matter how many lives, my music will always recognize your voice. Always." In the guest room, Alexander, under hypnosis, was crying, tears streaming down his face, his body tense, his breathing erratic. Dr. Carvalho monitored him, pulse accelerated but controllable. "Continue," she encouraged gently. "What happened the next day?" "They took him in the morning," Alexander whispered, his voice echoing the memory. "They tied his hands, dragged him across the courtyard. He looked up at the tower, searched for her. He couldn't see her, but he knew she was there. He screamed her name. One last time. 'Eleanor, Eleanor, don't forget our music.' And then the rope, the knot, the fall, the darkness. In Emily's room, she sobbed. "I saw it," she cried, "from the tower window. I saw everything. I saw them put on the rope. I saw when. She couldn't finish, her body shaking with sobs. Across time. Dr. Mendez continued, his voice gentle but firm. "What did you do after that, Eleanor?" "I sang," Emily whispered, "for 3 days, non-stop. His melody, our melody, until I had no voice left, until I had no tears left, until I had no reason to breathe. And then, I climbed onto the windowsill. It was night, a full moon. I could see the place where they hanged him. I could feel him waiting. On the other side. I sang one last time, without a voice, only air, only soul, and I jumped. Because living without him was impossible, and death with him was preferable to life without him. The sessions lasted an hour. When they ended, Emily was exhausted, pale, trembling. Alexander stumbled out of the room, his eyes red, lost. The doctors compared recordings. They were silent for a long time. They reviewed them, they checked them, they compared details, chronology, names, places, emotions. Finally, Dr. Mendez looked at Alexander and Emily, now sitting in the living room, waiting. "You both just described the same events, from the same locations, with the same names, same dates, same chateau, same execution, same suicide." He paused, weighing his words. "Neither of you could have prepared this. The emotions were too real, the details too specific, and most importantly, you described it from different but complementary perspectives. He saw her from the cell. She saw him from the tower. You both described the courtyard between you. The distances correspond, the times correspond. Even the melody you sang separately, when I asked you to reproduce it, corresponds perfectly. So it's real," Alexander said. "It wasn't a question, it was acceptance. More real than most childhood memories people have of this life," Dr. Carvalho confirmed. "You are not imagining it, you are not inventing it, you are remembering it." The sessions lasted an hour. When they ended, the doctors compared recordings. They were silent for a long time. Finally, Dr. Mendez looked at Alexander and Emily, now sitting in the living room, waiting. "The names you gave are different, but the location is identical. Château de Montclair, the year is identical, 1750. The architectural details you described, The structure of the court, the noble titles, all consistent with the historical period. He paused. This can be verified. Records of executions in 18th century France are well documented, especially public executions for class-based crimes. Verify it, Alexander said immediately. I want proof, real proof, not emotion, not feeling. Proof. Doctor, Mendez nodded. I will contact specialized historians, but I need to warn you, if we find proof, what will you do with that information? Alexander looked at Emily. She was pale, exhausted, but her eyes were locked on his. And in that moment, he knew. Even if there was no proof, even if there was never confirmation, he knew. He would always know. What we will do, he said slowly, is finally understand why my soul cries out every time she's near. The days that followed were strange. Alexander stopped avoiding Emily, but he didn't get any closer either. They orbited around each other, careful, scared, the weight of 275 years between them. Emily continued working, but now, when Emily hummed, Alexander would listen. He'd stop what he was doing, close his eyes, and remember. Lily watched everything with eyes too wise for a 5-year-old. She asked her mother one night, "Are you and Alexander going to be together now?" Emily kissed her daughter's forehead. "It's not that simple, sweetie. He's rich. We're not. He's my boss. I'm the housekeeper. The world doesn't always allow it." "But you did before," Lily murmured, almost asleep. "And look what happened." Emily froze. "What are you talking about? You were together even when it was forbidden, and you died." The little girl turned over. "Maybe this time you need to do it differently." A week later, Dr. Bennett returned. He carried a file of documents, thick, heavy. Alexander and Emily sat down in the study. The doctor opened the file slowly, almost reverently, as if he were opening a portal to another dimension. "I've spent the week researching," he began. "I contacted historians specializing in 18th century France, experts in aristocratic court records, archivists at historic chateaux." He pulled out the first document, and we found something. His voice was low, respectful, as if in the presence of something sacred. "Château de Montclair, France, Burgundy region, property of the de Valois family since the 1500s, record of a public execution. August 23rd, 1750. Alexander Monteverdi, 28 years old, court composer, hanged for the crime of seduction of a noblewoman. A crime against the social order. A crime against God." He placed a photocopy on the table. The original court record. The clerk's 18th century handwriting. Ink faded but legible. Alexander picked up the document, his hands trembling. The words danced before his eyes, but he read them. He forced himself to read every word. Accused Alexander Monteverdi, musical servant of the court. Crime, maintaining an illicit relationship with Duchess Eleanor Marie de Valois. Evidence, love letters found in his room. Testimony from a servant who saw them in the garden. Confession from the Duchess herself under interrogation. Sentence: death by hanging. Public execution. Body to be left hanging for 3 days as an example. Emily covered her mouth, tears already streaming down her face. Oh my God. Oh my God. It's all there. All real. All true. Dr. Bennett continued, pulling out more documents. There's more. Court records mention that during the trial, Alexander Monteverdi refused to deny his love. When asked if he regretted it, he replied, and I quote, "I regret only that I do not have more time to love her. If there is a crime in loving a pure soul, I accept the punishment. But I do not beg forgiveness for a feeling more true than any law of men." Alexander closed his eyes. He remembered saying that. He remembered the court falling silent. He remembered the Duke turning red with rage. He remembered Eleanor crying in the gallery, unable to speak. The doctor pulled out another paper. and 3 days after the execution. August 26, 1750, Duchess Eleanor Marie de Valois was found dead at dawn, fell from the north tower of the chateau. Officially recorded as an accident, but he pointed to a handwritten note in the margin. There's a note from the clerk, unofficial, but recorded. It says, "Witnesses report that the Duchess was singing before she fell, an unknown melody. Some say it was the same one the executed composer sang in his cell the night before his death. Guards tried to stop her, but the door was locked from the inside. When they broke it down, she had already jumped. Body found in the courtyard, in the same place where Alexander Monteverdi was hanged." Absolute silence in the study. Only the sound of Emily quietly weeping and Alexander trying to control his breathing. Dr. Bennett let them process it, then continued, "But there's even more." He pulled out photocopies of old pages when a manuscript in archaic French. "I gained access to the preserved personal archives of the chateau. There are letters, never sent, written by Eleanor in the days before her death, kept by the heirs, forgotten for centuries, recently digitized for historical preservation." He placed a translation on the table. One of the letters says, and I quote in full, "My beloved Alexander is gone. They have taken him from me as if love were a crime and feeling were a sin. But the soul knows no laws of men. The soul respects no titles or lands, which my soul is his. It has been his from the first moment I heard his music. It will be his beyond this life. If there is a God, if there is justice beyond this cruel world, we will meet again. My soul will know his, through time, through death, through everything that separates us. And when we meet, there will be no duchesses. There will be no servants. Only I, only he, and the music that united us." Emily sobbed. The same words, the same ones she felt but had never said aloud, as if Eleanor had written what Emily had always known. Alexander stood up, walked to the window, his hands trembling. 275 years, he whispered. 275 years, and she found my music again, through centuries, through lives, through death. Her promise was kept. Her voice found me. Dr. Bennett slowly gathered the documents. There's an academic community that studies cases like this. Genetic memory, reincarnation, connections that transcend lives. It would be possible to investigate further, perhaps find more details, personal objects and portraits. The chateau still exists. It's a museum now. Maybe there's more in the archives. No. Alexander turned, firm. I don't want anyone else knowing. This is ours. His and hers. Mine and hers. He looked at Emily. Just ours. We're not going to be a case study. We're not going to be an academic curiosity. This is sacred. Emily nodded, wiping away tears. I agree. We have enough proof already. For US, we don't need to prove it to the world. We just need to live what we couldn't live then. Dr. Bennett placed copies of all the documents in an envelope. He handed it to Alexander. I'll leave this with you, and my contact information if you ever change your mind. He hesitated at the door. Can I offer some non-professional advice? Not as a doctor, as a human being who has just witnessed something extraordinary. Alexander gestured for him to continue. In 1750, your love was a crime. Society separated you, killed one, destroyed the other, ended in a tragedy that echoed through centuries. Today, you have a choice. Today, there are no dukes deciding who can love whom. There are no laws against servants and nobles. You are free. He looked from one to the other intensely. Don't waste this life fighting against what you already know to be true. Don't repeat the mistake of hiding, of being afraid, of letting the world decide for you. Live, love, loudly, clearly, without shame. because 275 years of waiting deserves a different ending this time. And he left, leaving Alexander and Emily alone, with documents of a past life and a chance at a present one. After the doctor left, Alexander and Emily sat in silence. Finally, she whispered, "So, what now?" Alexander sat down, exhausted. "I need to process that everything I believed about reality was wrong. And I need to process that I'm the reincarnation of a duchess, and I still clean floors." Emily gave a sad smile. "Ironic, isn't it? A complete reversal." Alexander looked at her. "You won't be cleaning floors anymore. Not here. Not for me. I need to work. I need to support my daughter. You'll continue living here, in the master suite on the second floor, not as a housekeeper, as..." He paused. He didn't know how to finish. "As what?" Emily asked softly. "Your reincarnation? Your soulmate? Your paranormal experiment? As the woman who sang my music through the centuries." His voice broke. "As the woman who jumped from a tower because I died. As the only person in this world that my soul recognizes." Emily closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. "This doesn't change the fact that there's a gulf between us. You're a billionaire. I'm a single mother, without a formal education. The world. The hell with the world." Alexander stood up. "The world killed us once. I won't let it happen again." He walked to her, knelt in front of her, took her hands. Emily opened her eyes, surprised. Alexander Sterling didn't kneel for anyone. "In 1750, he said, his voice hoarse, "I was a servant, and you were a duchess. And I loved you, the only way I could. In secret, in the shadows, stealing moments. And it cost us everything, this time. I'm going to love you the right way. In the light. Without shame. Without fear." He squeezed her hands. "If you'll let me," Emily sobbed. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be the woman you deserve. You already are. You always have been, since 1750, before that, after that, in every life. My soul chooses yours. If you felt chills, if your heart clenched with this promise crossing centuries, comment, chills. So the algorithm knows that true love stories matter. The following months were a period of adjustment, of learning, of healing wounds that spanned lifetimes. Fair Alexander didn't make it public immediately. The world didn't need to know, so not yet. But he changed everything inside Sterling Estate. Emily and Lily now lived in the suite next to his, 2 rooms connected by a door that was never closed. Lily had her own room and decorated like a princess. Pink wallpaper, a 4-poster bed, a bookcase filled with books she always wanted but could never have. Emily had a closet bigger than the apartment where she used to live. Clothes that weren't second-hand, shoes that fit, dignity. For the first time in years, dignity. But most importantly, Alexander gave Emily something she never had. Time. Time to study. Time to discover who she was beyond a survivor. Time to breathe without fearing where her next meal would come from. Time to sing, because her voice was extraordinary. He always knew, from the first hum. But when he sat at the Black Steinway Grand and played, and she sang really, completely, without fear, without shame, he knew she was born for this. Or rather, she had already done this, in another life, as Duchess Eleanor, singing for European courts. The technique was in her soul, just waiting to be remembered. He hired teachers, the best, of lyrical singing, of music theory, of music history, of Italian. Because their melody was originally in Old Italian, and Emily needed to understand every word she sang. She absorbed everything with the hunger of someone who had been deprived of knowledge her entire life. She studied late into the night, practiced until her voice was hoarse. Alexander had to remind her to rest, and Lily blossomed. The girl who had always been strange, different, too quiet, who saw things that scared other children, now laughed, played, had friends, had private lessons, had stability. Alexander treated her like a daughter, not officially yet. Papers would take time, but in his gestures, in his care, in the way he looked at her when she laughed, as if she was making everything worthwhile. One night, 6 months after the revelation, Alexander called Emily to his study. There was something on the desk, an old wooden box, covered in dust, a rusty lock. "I was looking for family documents in the attic," he explained, his voice strange. "I found a trunk that belonged to my great-grandfather. He was a collector. He bought antiques from auctions of European noble properties, and I found this." He opened the box slowly. Inside, yellowed, stained with small tears of humidity and time, but legible, a musical score, handwritten, old brown ink that was once black. At the top, in elaborate calligraphy with flourishes typical of the 18th century. "For my Duchess E, my last composition, Alexander S, August 1750. Emily covered her mouth, hands trembling, heart racing. Is it the music? Our music?" Incomplete. Alexander picked up the paper with extreme care, as if it would disintegrate at his touch. Only the first few measures, maybe 8, 10 measures. The rest must have been lost, or destroyed when they executed him. But it's her. I recognize every note. Our melody. He looked at Emily, his eyes shining with contained tears. "This has crossed 275 years to reach us. My great-grandfather bought it at an auction of a French chateau in 1900, without knowing it was mine, from another life. Without knowing it was waiting for you. Underneath the scoretas rolled in faded velvet, there was something else." Alexander picked it up carefully, unrolled it, a locket, antique gold, a thin, delicate chain, a hand-worked clasp. He opened it, his breath caught. Inside, a painted miniature, 18th century painting technique. Colors still vibrant despite the time. A dark-haired man, a brown frock coat, an intense gaze, a woman with her hair up, a blue dress, a gentle smile, a gold background, period clothing. 1750. Emily took the locket with hands trembling so much that she almost dropped it. Alexander held it together. They looked and recognized. Is it us, Alexander and Eleanor?" Alexander nodded, unable to speak. He pointed to the woman in the miniature. "The necklace she's wearing. Do you see it? Small, golden, the shape of..." He paused, looked at Emily. "Do you recognize it?" Emily looked closer, frowned. "A musical note?" She froze, complete freeze, blood leaving her face. "Alexander!" She dropped the locket into his hand, ran to her room. Alexander heard drawers opening, things falling, Emily searching frantically. She returned 2 minutes later, gasping for breath, holding a small box of faded blue velvet. "My grandmother's inheritance, the only thing of value I have, that I brought from the old house. That I carried even when we slept on the street, because it was all that was left of her family." She opened the box with trembling hands. She'd never known the story. Her grandmother always said it came from far away, from a long time ago, a French family. That was all. She never knew more. Inside the box, resting on white satin that had once been bright white, but was now a creamy ivory with age, was a necklace, a small musical note, crafted from antique gold, delicate, exactly like the one in the miniature portrait, exactly like the one Duchess Eleanor de Valois wore in 1750. Alexander picked up the necklace. He compared it to the miniature. A perfect fit. The same design. The same proportions. The same musical note. G. The first note of their melody. They looked at each other, and then at the objects scattered on the table. A handwritten musical score from 1750. A locket containing a miniature portrait of them from another life. A necklace that had traversed centuries through a family inheritance that Emily didn't even know existed. Tracing back to France, status to chateau, to duchesses. "This isn't a coincidence," Emily whispered. "This is impossible. Unlikely, but real." Alexander pulled her close. "It was never a coincidence. Not from the moment you first sang that melody. Not from the moment I decided to hire you despite all logic. Not from the moment Lily was born knowing things she shouldn't." He cupped her face in his hands. "It was always destiny. Proven, validated, real, documented on paper from 1750, painted in a miniature, carried through generations until it reached you. Everything's connected and everything's purposeful. Everything was waiting for this moment." They stood there, holding the proof of past lives, building their present life, honoring promises made across death. 3 months later, Alexander made another decision. "I'm going to finish the composition." Emily looked at him confused. "How?" "The melody you sing. It's complete in your memory. In mine. I'm going to transcribe it. Officially. Completely. I'm going to register it." He took her hands. "And you're going to sing it to the world, the way we couldn't in 1750. Emily paled. "Alexander, I'm not a professional singer. I can't. You are. Your teacher said your voice is 1 in a million. A natural technique that most people take decades to develop. It's as if you've been singing your whole life." He smiled. "Because you have. In 1750. As a duchess. For European courts. It's in your soul." "I'm scared." So was I. Scared to admit the impossible. Scared to love you. Scared to lose you again. But I'm going to do it anyway." He touched her face. "Because this time, we're going to do it right, without hiding, without shame. Our music will exist. Officially. Eternally." Emily closed her eyes, took a deep breath. Okay, let's do this." The months of preparation were intense. Alexander worked on the composition, expanding the melody, adding harmonies, maintaining the essence of the original song but creating a complete work. Modern yet timeless, Emily trained every day. Voice, stage presence, interpretation, and something magical happened. The more she sang, the more she remembered, not just 1750, other lives, other eras. Always music, always him. Alexander noticed it too. When he played the Black Steinway Grand, it wasn't just his fingers memorizing, it was his soul remembering. Compositions that sprang forth fully formed, as if they had always existed, waiting to be recalled. Lily continued to surprise them. One day she said, "You know it wasn't just once, right?" Emily stopped brushing her hair. "What are you talking about, honey?" "You guys." The little girl was playing with dolls on the floor. "It wasn't just 1750. There were other times. Many times. You always find each other." She looked up, serious. "But this time it's different. This time you'll succeed." "Succeed at what?" Alexander asked, entering the room. "Staying together." Lily went back to her dolls, instead of dying sad. Alexander and Emily exchanged a look. The child was 5 years old, but she spoke as if she were 1,000. A year after they first heard the melody, Alexander organized a private concert. He invited musicians, critics, friends, select media. No one knew the purpose. Only that Alexander Sterling, a magnate who had never been publicly involved with art, was presenting something special. The music room of Sterling Estate was prepared. 100 chairs, a small stage, a piano, a microphone, intimate lighting. Emily was backstage wearing a sky blue dress that Alexander had commissioned. When she saw it, she recognized it. It was the same as the dress in the miniature, the same one she wore in 1750. Alexander came up behind her. He placed something around her neck. The necklace. The gold musical note. "It belongs to you," he whispered. "It always has." Emily touched the necklace, looked in the mirror. For a second she saw Duchess Eleanor looking back, smiling, thanking her. Finally. "Ready?" Alexander asked. She turned around, took his hand. 275 years in the making. They entered together. The audience fell silent. Alexander went to the piano, Emily to the microphone. He made no introduction, no explanation. He simply began to play. The first chords filled the room. People leaned forward. The melody was strange, ancient, but beautiful, hypnotic. And then Emily sang. Her voice was pure, clear, perfect, in old Italian. Words she had never formally studied, but that flowed as naturally as breathing. The lyrics that Alexander transcribed from memories of dreams, of trances, of moments between lives. The song spoke of forbidden love, of promises across death, of souls that seek each other through centuries, of melodies that never die. When she reached the chorus, Alexander sang along, bass, harmony, perfect, as if they had rehearsed for 1,000 lifetimes, because they had. In the audience, people wept, without knowing why, only feeling. The weight of centuries, the beauty of love that transcends death, the hope that some things are eternal. When the music ended, there was silence, long, profound, then applause, standing, thunderous. But Alexander and Emily only looked at each other, because they knew. They had just done what they couldn't in 1750. They had loved, publicly, in the light, and survived. Some people will pause here, will hold their phones tighter, will want to believe that a love like this exists, if you're one of those people. If this story touched you too deeply to be just entertainment, give thanks here. Because impossible stories need witnesses to continue to exist. The media exploded. The song was recorded professionally, released, went viral, not because it was commercial, but because it was true. People felt it, the authenticity, the weight, the eternity. Alexander and Emily gave interviews, but they didn't tell everything. They spoke of love, of music, of second chances. They didn't mention reincarnation. They let people interpret as they wished, but those who truly listened, who truly felt, knew. That song wasn't composed. It was remembered. 6 months after the concert, Alexander proposed to Emily. It wasn't elaborate. It was simple. In the music room, where it all began. He was at the Black Steinway Grand. She was singing. And Lily. She was sleeping on the sofa. He stopped playing in the middle of the melody. He looked at Emily. "Marry me," he said, "in this life, and in all the others, officially, legally, eternally." Emily smiled. Tears streamed down her face. "In 1750, I said yes in the shadows," she whispered. "This time, I'll say yes in the light." They were married 3 months later, a small ceremony, just close friends and family. Lily was the flower girl, happy. Finally, with a complete family, for their honeymoon, Alexander took Emily and Lily to France, to Château de Montclair, now a historical museum. They toured it. They saw the ballroom where they had met 275 years before. They saw the tower where she had jumped. They saw the courtyard where he had been executed. The museum guide told the local legend of the Duchess Eleanor who died for a forbidden love, of the maestro who composed a lost song, of the melody that they say can still be heard at night, when the wind blows just right. Alexander and Emily exchanged a look. "It's not lost," he whispered. She found her way back. In the museum's historical records room, Alexander requested special permission. He wanted to see the original documents. The curator, an elderly man, intrigued, permitted it, and there, in carefully preserved archives, they found them, letters from Duchess Eleanor, written in the days before her death, never sent, kept hidden, forgotten for centuries. One of them read, "If there is a God, if there is justice beyond this life, we will meet again. My soul will know yours. Through time, through death, through everything that separates us. And when we meet, there will be no Duchess, there will be no servants, just me, just you, and the music that united us." Emily read it, her hands trembling. She knew. She had always known. Alexander requested a copy of the letter. He paid what was necessary, took it home, framed it, hung it in the music room, final proof, testimony through the centuries. They returned to New York different, complete. Their story was no longer a mystery, it was a legacy. Alexander created a foundation to support struggling artists, especially musicians, especially those who society said couldn't make it. He appointed Emily as co-director. She, who had lived on the streets with her daughter, now decided who received grants, who received opportunities. Lily grew up, special, wise. She said things that a child shouldn't know. But Alexander and Emily were no longer surprised. Some souls come differently. Some remember more. Some are bridges between worlds. 3 years after their wedding, Emily discovered she was pregnant. Alexander cried, not from sadness, from completeness. The family that began in tragedy in 1750 finally had a happy ending when their son was born, a boy with green eyes. Alexander held him and whispered, "Welcome back," because he felt it. This was no ordinary son. This was a familiar soul, returning, completing the circle. They named him Alexander Sterling Jr., but everyone called him Alex. The baby was calm, but when Emily sang, he paid attention differently, as if he recognized it, as if he remembered. One day, Lily, now 8 years old, said, "Alex was your brother in 1750. He also died when you died." A moment of sadness crossed her face. She stroked the baby's head. But now he's back with the right family, a happy ending. Alexander didn't question it. He just accepted it. The mysteries of past lives didn't all need to be solved. Some just needed to be lived. The music that Emily and Alexander created, officially registered as Eleanor's Melody, won awards. It was studied in conservatories, analyzed by musicologists. Some said it was a modern and brilliant composition. Others felt something older, something that transcended time. Emily recorded a full album of songs that she and Alexander composed together. But Eleanor's Melody was always the first, always the most special, always the one that made audiences cry without fully understanding why. In interviews, they were asked, "What's the secret? How do you compose something so timeless?" Alexander always answered, "I don't compose. I remember. And Emily sings what my soul has always known. People interpreted it as poetry, as a metaphor. They let them. The complete truth wasn't for everyone, only for those ready to believe that true love never dies. It just waits. Through centuries, through lives, until it finds its way back. Have you ever met someone and felt like you knew them before? Have you ever heard a song that you never learned but know every note? Have you ever loved someone and felt that it was for longer than this life allows? If so, you're not alone. Some connections transcend time. Some souls seek each other through centuries, and some melodies never die. They just wait for the right voice to come back to life. What's your story of an impossible connection? What's your melody that crosses lives? Comment below, because maybe your soul is also remembering something that you haven't consciously admitted yet. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't a coincidence that you found this story today. 20 years after the day that Emily first hummed in the Sterling estate, Alexander and Emily sat in the music room, hair streaked with silver, wrinkles around their eyes, but the same, essentially the same. Lily was an adult now, 25 years old, a psychologist, specializing in past life memories, continuing the work that started within her, helping others who remembered, who felt, who knew. Alex was 17, a musician, an absurd natural talent. He composed as if he already knew. He played as if he remembered, because he did remember. The foundation had helped thousands, struggling musicians, street singers, children with talent but without resources. Emily visited them personally. She told her story. She gave them hope. And the melody, Eleanor's melody, 2 decades after its release, it still played. At weddings, in movies, at important moments for people around the world, because it touched something deep, something beyond notes, something of the soul. Alexander took Emily's hand. Do you think we did it? This time? Did we break the cycle? Emily rested her head on his shoulder. I don't think there was a cycle to break. There was just a lesson to learn. What lesson? That true love isn't about class. It's not about era. It's not about who society says you should be. It's about souls that recognize each other. And this time she raised her face. We let that be bigger than fear, bigger than shame, bigger than the world. Then yes, we did it. He kissed her, slowly, reverently, as always, as in 1750, as in every life before, as in every life after, because some promises are eternal, some melodies never die, and some souls always find each other, no matter how many lives it takes. In the end, what truly remains isn't wealth, it isn't fame, it certainly isn't power. What endures is the love you cherished and fiercely protected, the music you poured your soul into, the promises you kept, and the souls that, against all odds, you recognized. Alexander and Emily understood this deeply, because they had lived it, through death itself, across the vast expanse of time, enduring 275 years of waiting to be reunited. And finally, they achieved the ending they had always deserved, a destiny written in the stars, not because it was easy, oh no, far from it, but because it was true, because their connection ran deeper than blood, and truth, in the end, always prevails, always, no matter the obstacles.